San Francisco. And I prepared a funny story about visiting the French cathedral. And the day of the show is the day that the Notre Dame Cathedral burned. Tonight's story is about a visit to China. Just as they're shutting down travel because of the coronavirus. So I just want to dedicate this story to the people of China. How many of you like to eat? How many of you like to travel? See where I'm going here? Food is one of the best parts of travel, both learning about new cuisines we know nothing about, or expanding our knowledge of other foods that we think we know. In my trips to Japan, I've been impressed by the wide variety of Japanese food that's out there, way beyond the sushi, tempura, and teriyaki troika that you find in this country. And if you travel south of the border, you'll learn that there's a lot more Mexican food than just burritos and tacos. Now, I've eaten Chinese food all my life. But nevertheless, on a trip to Shanghai, I was looking forward to some good and possibly interesting Chinese meals. 4 of us were traveling from the States, the end of a long video shoot that had taken us across Europe, through the US, and now to China, along with 13 cases of camera and audio equipment. Our arrival on Tuesday evening of that week was inauspicious, to say the least. When we landed, we learned that the customs officials, the Chinese customs officials, had decided that the cash bond that we had to post in order to bring our equipment into the country was going to be $11,000 US, not $7,000 as they told us before. This was a problem, but not insurmountable. We had help. Andrew, our Chinese producer from Hong Kong, had some wisdom here. Chinese people and government like to keep you off balance. Everything is simple but complicated. For half a dozen shoots in Hong Kong and all across China, Andrew had been our fixer, our man on the ground, our local producer. And we knew he could handle any problem. So he and his assistants fanned out across Shanghai that evening, long after the banks had closed, and rustled up the extra cash. While Jim, my video engineer, stayed at the airport with the equipment until the situation was resolved a few hours later. Jim also owned the equipment, so he had a The following morning, Wednesday, the important doctor we'd come to Shanghai to interview told us, in no uncertain terms, that he was unavailable the rest of the week, despite our weeks of planning around that schedule. And he told us we had to film his interview that same day, Wednesday. This was a problem. Our local lighting crew and lighting equipment had only been booked for Thursday and Friday, our intended shoot days. Wednesday, that first day on the ground, was supposed to be planning and scouting. The important doctor was immovable, so we decided to leave the hospital for a couple of hours of R&R, which in this case meant replanning and reorganizing. First, we had to consult with our 2 clients from the giant medical company that had brought us to Shanghai to interview the important doctor. The big question was, where should we go for lunch? They recommended a place in the area. It seemed kind of nice. We were in a working class district far from downtown. There were potted plants and big booths, but they stuck us in a private room in the back of the restaurant, kind of cramped. We were the only Western faces in there, and they had dedicated a waiter to us who felt like it was his job to drop by and meet our every request about every hour or 2. First on the agenda were liquids. We 4 gringos had come from the States. We were tired and jet-lagged and thirsty and dehydrated. And we all asked for bottled water. Andrew consulted with the waiter. This really isn't a tourist place. No bottled water. Well, what do they have? And Andrew had always cautioned us against ice and tap water in China. What do they have? Another consultation with the waiter. Beer and soft drinks. Great, said Jim. I'll have a Coke. Another consultation. No Coke. No Pepsi. What do they serve? Look at menu. Well, the menu had lots of beautiful color pictures of drinks and foods that we couldn't identify. Many of the drinks were something called bubble tea, which we'd never heard of back then, but it looked refreshing. Laurie, our producer, ordered one, but it came with a kind of in a radioactive orange color. I ordered one too, and it had had an alarming blue glow, and they both had ice, and we left them and never touched them. Eventually, the waiter, finally catching on, brought us very small glasses of very hot water, recently boiled. But it was a long time before these cooled off enough for us to be able to drink them. For most of the meal, I surreptitiously sipped water from a bottle I carried in my pocket from San Francisco. But I didn't tell anyone on my trip. This was all coupled with the discovery that the restrooms in that restaurant, at least the men's room, only had urinals and the dreaded straddle crappers, those porcelain holes in the floor with the footprints where you put your feet while you squat. For me, this was a low point. We were truly unbalanced. And so it went. We assumed we'd eat family style, the way we do in Chinese restaurants here in the States. So we each ordered a dish to share. But when they came out as individual lunch plates with rice. We still tried to share, but it was kind of clumsy when the restaurant told us they had no other plates to help us share our food. They had no other plates to help us share our food. For me to get food, I was in a hard bench at the end of the table. I had to stand up, reach across my coworkers like this, and with my chopsticks, shovel a few grains of rice and a little bit of greasy chicken curry into a napkin, which I then had to maneuver into my open maw, kind of like watching the sea lion eating pilaf. All in all, a difficult meal with indifferent service. But during that meal, for the first time, Andrew told us that he had an inkling of the important doctor's scheduling problems the day before, and he had taken the initiative and rebooked our lighting crew and our lighting equipment for that afternoon. And while we were eating, Andrew received confirmation that a lighting professional from Hong Kong, a guy we'd worked with before, a fellow named Dragon Lau, had left Hong Kong early that morning on a high-speed train and would be arriving in Shanghai within the hour. So Andrew had it covered. He expected to field a fully equipped lighting crew by 2 p.m. Randy, our director, breathed a sigh of relief. Whew, this might just work out after all. Andrew popped up, sure, should be okay. This always amused Randy. So you're not saying it will be okay, just that it should be okay. This was Andrew's typical qualified response to our constant questioning and pestering about every little detail. Andrew was as good as his word. By mid-afternoon, Dragon Lau and his local cohorts joined us at the hospital, and we quickly loaded in our lighting, sound, and video equipment. And within a couple of hours, we'd filmed our interview with the important doctor, the main thing we'd come for. And the next morning, we interviewed his head nurse, the second big thing we'd come for. They both told us of the great work that they were doing in coronary angioplasty, in which they used amazing and fabulously expensive digital imaging equipment made by our clients to examine the blood vessels and hearts of their various patients, looking for blockages. And when they found blockages, to open them up by inserting metal stents or inflating coronary balloons. And they told us about an 80-year-old man who lived near the hospital who had gone through the procedure and had a great recovery. And they promised to put us in touch with the 80-year-old man. Things were looking up. Clearly we deserved a good lunch on day 2. This, despite the discovery that the restrooms in the hospital, which was otherwise a bastion of modern health and cleanliness, the restrooms all had straddle crappers, and they were none too clean. This time, Andrew took us to a different place. We went to a large restaurant with a big lobby filled with displays of all the various foods that were available. Lots of fish, both dead and alive. Shrimp and shellfish, all alive. Turtles, dead, thank goodness. And a variety of Chinese dishes we couldn't identify. Now, I've never been a big fan of the kill to order thing, where they take a living critter and plunge it into boiling water or a saute pan to satisfy your lust for tender flesh. Besides, Jim had had problems with shellfish before. The fish didn't look fresh. And I really didn't want to eat turtle. We wanted something yummy but safe. We'd been on the road together for 4 weeks already. We just wanted something that was kind of predictable. Then Lori, our producer, spotted something that looked familiar. It looked like chicken, delicately fried to a delicious golden brown, with merry little chunks of red pepper, zesty diced green onions, toasted peanuts. Is this like a kung pao chicken? Sure, kind of, but not much meat. We didn't know what Andrew meant by that, but it looked good, and the 4 of us were all in. 4 orders of the kung pao-like thing, please. Sure, should be okay, Andrew chuckled as he turned to the waitress and had a lengthy discussion trying to order this for us, all the time waggling 4 fingers. We trooped off to the dining room. It was a big place. We sat with our whole Chinese crew around a big round table. In the center was a lazy Susan that carried a lot of dishes that the crew had ordered. I was tempted to nosh from the lazy Susan until our food arrived. But I've never been very fond of eating shrimp with the eyes, tail, feet, feelers, and shell still intact, especially shrimp I'd just seen swimming around happily a few minutes before. We all decided to wait for our golden brown comfort food, the kung pao-like thing. When it arrived, it looked and smelled terrific. I was hungry now, breakfast just a dim memory. As I prepared to tuck into it, I heard Lori say, "Oh, I've got a little bone here." And Jim said, "Me too, several bones." And Randy yelled, "Mine's all bones." Silly people. How bad could it be? It looked and smelled terrific, and as I took my first bite of meat and vegetables, it rated very high on the yum, yum, yum scale. But then, as I started to chew, I encountered an unexpected texture. Too soft to shatter my dental work, but too hard for me to crunch up thoroughly. I chewed and sucked around the hard parts. It was kind of bony. I tried to push them to one side of my mouth and concentrate on the other stuff. But the red peppers were pretty hot, and if I avoided them too, there wouldn't be much to eat but an occasional sliver of onion and a toasted peanut here and there. I couldn't get through even one bite without spitting, despite my not wanting to offend our Chinese host. I found a small plate and expelled a big gob of chewed chicken onto the plate, which alarmingly looked just like the unchewed chicken. What is this? I was mortified by my inability to masticate my food. I told you, not much meat. Randy growled. Yeah, you didn't happen to mention it's all bone. Not all bone. It's a delicacy in northern China. What's it called? Andrew consulted in Mandarin with Vincent, our Chinese translator, a recent graduate of translation school. Vincent consulted the Chinese-English app on his iPhone. Here it is. Cartilage. Cartilage? We've been eating cartilage? Yep, you ordered it. 4 orders. Randy turned to him and said, Andrew, this reminds me of the time in Taiwan when you let me order duck web soup, but you wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Yep, you want that? I'll order that for you too, but I never eat that stuff. Pretty soon, my compadres were tired of chewing and sucking and avoiding the hard parts, or some of them had just lost their appetites, but I was still hungry. So I went up to the Lazy Susan and selected something. Congealed pork cubes, a bit gelatinous in texture, but delicious. slimy yet satisfying. After our lunch of gristle and slime cubes, we decided to walk to the apartment of Mr. Wu, the 80-year-old patient of the important doctor, the man who had such a nice recovery. He lived just a few blocks away. On the way, Vincent the translator asked me about my musical preferences. What is your favorite jazz? I thought for a minute. Well, I love John Coltrane and Miles Davis. Who are they? Jazz musicians, Americans. What is your favorite jazz? And we were crossing the street when I asked him that, and the light turned red. And I scurried across, and he timidly went back to where he started. He was so thin it looked like he could blow away in a stiff wind. And he called out to me, "I love you for sentimental reasons." It took me a minute to realize he was talking about a song by Nat King Cole. Mr. Wu was a retired engineer and lived on the top floor of a modern building. Nice apartment, but the 10 people on our crew quickly filled it up, along with 4 or 5 Wu relatives, a couple of neighbors who dropped by to see what was going on. Our 2 clients from the giant medical company decided it was a good time to stop by. And a doctor from the hospital showed up for no apparent reason, but not the important doctor himself. He was too important. It was crowded in the apartment. Wu and family and neighbors all enjoyed watching us work. They enjoyed watching us stumble over each other and over them as we tried to move our camera, lighting, and sound equipment around the apartment. Eventually, Andrew sent a couple of the lighting guys to wait outside because it was so crowded that it was actually more efficient to work with fewer people. Whenever we changed camera setups, everyone would stand, move slightly so we could kind of shimmy through past them, find a new position, move, sit, stand, move, sit. Eventually we got through our setup. Dragon Lau enjoyed barking orders at his local lighting crew. We used to tease him that he was so loud that he could call back to Hong Kong from Shanghai without a phone. Nevertheless, the setup went well. Mr. Wu looked great on camera, broad, handsome face with impossibly jet black hair. The interview went well. Vincent, the translator, had a little bit of trouble with some of the medical terminology and also didn't really understand Mr. Wu's Shanghainese dialect. But we got through the whole thing with a lot of help from Andrew. He told us about his recovery from his coronary procedure, how it had relieved his pain and other symptoms. And he said, why do I look so young? Because I try to stay positive and not worry. And he told us he loved to sing. As if on cue, the door opened and in walked Mr. Wu's middle-aged son and teenage granddaughter. We put Wu and granddaughter at the piano and filmed them playing and talking together at the piano. Mr. Wu played a few notes on the keyboard. Boom, 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 and grunted through some vague vocalizations. Not really musical at all, but who was I to poo-poo his atonal utterances if that's what kept him young? Granddaughter, who was quite tall for her age, played the first dozen bars of Humoresque on the piano before dissolving in an embarrassed fit of adolescent self-consciousness. The next day, we filmed Mr. Wu walking through the neighborhood and buying food at a local market. We had a lot of fun working with him and cajoling the food vendors into appearing on camera next to him in front of big stacks of Chinese herbs and fruits and vegetables, sides of beef, dead fish, and 3-foot-long eels. It was great to see him out and about, independent and able to take care of himself, and out of pain. We had a great end for our story. The long video shoot we'd done across three continents was coming to an end. And guess what? It was time for lunch again. This time we hit the lunch jackpot on the third try. Andrew took us to a magnificent dim sum place in the Golden Magnolia Plaza skyscraper, right next door to the Buckingham Palace Karaoke Club. I saw on the menu they specialized in a dish called spicy Jew's ear. But we feasted instead on Shanghai steamed buns, rice noodle rolls, chicken pot stickers, pork and taro dumplings, lots of drinks, fresh oolong tea and bottled water and bubble tea and Coke, but no beverage. I found out later that spicy Jew's ear is a type of mushroomy fungus, but it still didn't sound like something I'd want to eat. We had a great time. We mostly ate things we were familiar with. And best of all, nobody served us cartilage. Thank you.